This video will show you how to install a rear rack on a RadMini. The steps will be similar for a RadMini Step-Thru. You will need a 4mm Allen wrench, an 8mm wrench, a torque wrench with a 4mm Allen bit, flat side cutters, and the rear rack kit from Rad Power Bikes. Get the bike ready for maintenance. Turn off the bike, remove the battery, and press and hold mode to discharge remaining power. Locate and unplug the taillight connector. Trace the cable from the taillight to the connector, snip zip ties as needed to create cable slack, and pull the connector directly apart without twisting to unplug. Carefully snip the zip ties to free the taillight cable from the seat stay. Remove the taillight mount from the bike frame. Use a 4mm Allen wrench to remove the two bolts. Press the tool into the bolt head fully and turn the tool slowly to prevent damaging the bolt head. Recycle the hardware according to local rules. Remove the taillight from the taillight mounting bracket. Use an 8mm wrench to remove the lock nuts and washers. Set the taillight, lock nuts, and washers close by. They'll be used to mount the taillight to the built-in mount on the rear rack. Keep the bracket for future use or recycle it according to local rules. Locate the rear rack, the taillight, and the taillight mounting hardware set aside earlier. Place the taillight into position on the built-in mount on the rear rack. On the other side of the mount, pass a washer and a lock nut onto the bolt end. Thread on the lock nuts by hand, and then use an 8mm wrench to tighten the lock nuts securely. Locate the 4 rear rack mounting bolts, 2 flat washers, and 2 lock nuts included in the kit. 2 bolts are slightly thicker and will be used to mount the bottom of the rear rack to the seat stay. Orient the rack as shown so the taillight is at the back of the bike. Place the rack into position so the lower mounting holes align with the outside mounting points on the seat stay and the upper holes align with the inside of the frame. Adjust the fender by hand if needed. Using the 2 slightly thicker bolts, loosely secure the rack to the lower mounting points. Carefully thread a bolt partway through the rear rack mounting hole and into the seat stay mounting hole by hand. Tightening only partway will help make it easier to align and thread the other 3 bolts into the mounting points. If needed, use a 4mm Allen wrench to help install the bolt partway. Press the tool into the bolt head fully and turn the bolt slowly to prevent damaging the bolt head. A small amount of resistance is normal, but take your time and make sure you don't cross-thread the bolts or damage the threads in the frame. Repeat with the other slightly thicker bolt on the other seat stay. Loosely secure the rack to the upper mounting points. Line up the mounting holes on the rack in the bike frame. Carefully thread a bolt partway through the rear rack mounting hole and into the frame mounting point. If needed, use a 4mm Allen wrench to help install the bolt partway. Press the tool into the bolt head fully and turn the bolt slowly to prevent damaging the bolt head. Make sure you don't cross-thread the bolts or damage the threads in the frame, and leave the bolt loosely secured for now. Repeat with the last bolt, leaving it loosely secured. Hold the rack in alignment with the mounting point, and at the same time use a 4mm Allen wrench to tighten each of the top bolts about 3 full turns, alternating between the 2 bolts to tighten them evenly. On the lower bolts, use a 4mm Allen wrench to thread in each bolt fully and pass a washer and a lock nut onto each bolt end. Use an 8mm wrench on the lock nut and a 4mm wrench on the bolt head and tighten each bolt fully. Torque the 4 bolts to 7 Nm. Route the taillight cable as shown. Keep the cable taut, but not so tight that the cable is stretched, and plug in the connector at the taillight. Line up the internal notch and pins and external arrows, and press each side directly together without twisting to connect. Use the taillight extension cable if needed. Zip tie the cable to the cable guides on the rack, making sure the cable is away from moving parts. Snip zip tie excess to be flush and smooth. Reinstall the battery, test the bike fully before riding, and ride rad.